I used to think power was loud, that it announced itself before it entered the room. But I learned the hard way that real power often walks past you without even looking down. The morning, it finally broke me. Started like any other gray lobby floors still damp from my mop. My uniform smelling faintly of bleach when a man in a tailored suit brushed past and muttered, "Move it, man. Some of us have real jobs," and the thing that hurt wasn't even the words. It was the way he said them without slowing down, without eye contact, like he was talking to a chair. That was the moment I realized how invisible I had become, how easy it was for people to decide who mattered and who didn't, and how quickly they got comfortable treating the rest of us like background noise. My name is Daniel Carter, or at least that's the name on the janitor badge clipped to my chest. For 6 weeks, that badge was all anyone saw. No last name that meant anything, no resume, no history worth asking about. Just a mop, a cart, and a job nobody thanked you for. What no one knew was that 6 weeks earlier, I had been sitting alone in a glass office 40 floors up, staring at a city I technically owned pieces of, asking myself a question that kept echoing louder every night. If all of this disappeared, would anyone still choose me? Not the title, not the money, just me. You know what I mean. That question didn't come out of nowhere. I'd been burned before. Twice. Once by a woman who loved the idea of my life more than the man living it, and once by another who waited long enough to convince me she was different before laughing with her friends about how long she could secure the bag. Yeah, that happened. After that, my therapist asked me when the last time was that someone treated me like a regular guy, and I didn't have an answer. So I did something drastic. I stepped out of my own life and into the quietest role I could find. I applied for a janitorial job at one of my own office buildings under a fake name, fake references, minimum wage, night shift. Human Resources barely glanced at my application. That should have told me something right there. I moved into a tiny apartment with thin walls and a radiator that knocked like it was angry at the world. My rule was simple: no favors, no reveals. I wanted to see who people were when they thought no one important was watching. What I saw wasn't pretty. Executives who talked down to me without realizing it. Managers who snapped their fingers instead of saying "excuse me," coworkers who made jokes just loud enough for me to hear. One afternoon, a woman deliberately set her empty coffee cup on the floor next to the trash can, looked me in the eye, and walked away. Another day, someone scribbled a slur on the bathroom wall and nobody bothered to investigate. I started keeping a small notebook in my locker, just one line for each interaction. Did this person treat me like a human being, yes or no? By the end of week 5, the page was nothing but no's. Then came the 6th week, and everything changed. Her name was Emily Ross. She worked in accounting, wore the same simple dresses on rotation, and always looked like she was carrying more weight than just her tote bag. The first time she spoke to me, it wasn't dramatic. She just smiled, looked me in the eye, and said, "Morning, Daniel. Thanks for keeping this place from falling apart." That was it, but it landed harder than any insult had. The second time, she asked how my day was going like she actually wanted an answer. Small things, right? But when you've been invisible long enough, small things feel huge. I started noticing her the way you notice someone who feels different. She skipped lunch some days, took calls in the stairwell with her voice shaking, rode the service elevator when she thought no one was looking. One night after my shift, I broke my own rule and checked the employee database. I told myself it was curiosity, but it was concern. Emily made barely enough to cover rent, and her pay was being garnished for medical bills. Her mom had a chronic illness treatments insurance wouldn't fully cover. Suddenly, the way she moved through the day made sense. A few days later, someone left an envelope on her desk. Cash and a note enough to cover her mom's medication. Anonymous. She didn't know it was me, and I didn't want her to. What mattered was what she did after. She walked through the cafeteria, scanning faces, confused, overwhelmed, trying to figure out who could have done something like that. When she saw me sitting alone with a vending machine sandwich, she bought 2 coffees and sat down like it was the most natural thing in the world. "You mind if I join you?" she asked. People stared. Some whispered. She didn't care. We talked about nothing and everything about her sister trying to get into college, about my so-called plans that I kept vague on purpose. At one point, she asked how I stayed so calm around people who treated me like I didn't matter. I told her the truth. People show you who they are when they think you're beneath them. The good ones, they're rare. She nodded and said, "Well, I think you matter." I had to look down at my coffee because my eyes were burning. 3 days later, the building cafeteria turned into a battleground. It was packed loud, normal until Victor Hale walked in. Senior vice president, loud voice, expensive haircut, the kind of guy who enjoyed reminding people where he ranked. He noticed me wiping down tables and smirked. "Hey, janitor," he said, snapping his fingers. "Get over here and take out my trash." His tray was empty. He hadn't even eaten yet. The room went quiet in that uncomfortable way where everyone pretends they didn't hear it. I hesitated just for a second. Then I started walking. That's when Emily stood up. Her chair scraped against the floor loud enough to cut through the silence. "His name is Daniel," she said, voice shaking but clear. "And you can walk your own trash to the bin like everyone else." Victor laughed, slow and mocking. "You serious right now? You're defending the janitor." She didn't blink. "I'm defending basic decency." He leaned in, dropped his voice, tried to scare her. "You know who I am?" She swallowed and said, "I know who you are being." Phones came out. People recorded. Victor finally dumped his own tray and leaned close enough to whisper, "You just made a mistake." He left red-faced and the room erupted into whispers. Emily sat back down, hands shaking like she had just stepped off a ledge. I looked at her tears threatening to spill and mouthed, "Thank you." She nodded. That was all. That night I watched the video over and over, not because of him, but because of her. The courage it took to stand up when she had everything to lose. The next morning I asked her to dinner, as Daniel, as the janitor. She said yes, even after coworkers mocked her for it, even after Victor and a couple of managers cornered her in the break room and suggested she was desperate, unprofessional, embarrassing herself. She walked out with her head high and went on that date anyway. That was the moment I knew I couldn't keep hiding. Monday morning, I walked into the boardroom as myself. Real name, real suit, real power. The silence was deafening. I laid it all out, the experiment, the notebook, the footage. I fired Victor on the spot, disciplined the others, and announced changes that would make the place unrecognizable. Then I spoke to the entire company and told them about Emily, the only person who passed the test. I apologized to her publicly. I told her I had feelings for her real ones. She ran to the lobby, and when she saw me, she didn't smile. She said, "You lied to me." She was right. I told her why, about the fear, the past, the need to know. She cried. She told me trust wasn't something you could buy back. I told her I knew, and that I'd wait as long as it took. 6 months later, we walked through that same lobby together, hand in hand, different people in a changed place. She stopped to greet a new janitor by name just like she did for me. That's when it hit me. This was never about money or revenge or proving a point. It was about seeing people. Really seeing them. So here's what I want to ask you. When was the last time you stood up for someone who couldn't do anything for you? When was the last time you were the Emily in the room or the Daniel? Tell me what you think. Was what I did right, or did I cross a line? Drop your thoughts in the comments, argue with me if you want, share your own story. Because if there's one thing I learned, it's that character shows up when no one important is watching. And maybe that's exactly when it matters most.